Warning, the topics discussed in these videos contain the thoughts of myself, DZ Productions, and these thoughts in no way are intended to attack specific machinima or people in the Halo Machinima community. These are my thoughts and observations collected over years of watching Halo Machinima. And if you think I'm reading too much into things, you're probably right. Thank you. We all watch Machinima, some more than others, but recently, when retrospecting over Halo Machinimas I enjoyed so many years ago, I immediately thought about the characters. But the only characters I could think of are the ones from action, adventure, and comedy Machinimas.
Our teaching, like I said.
But they shiny. You shoot things that are shiny. Not us.
So with that, are action, adventure, and comedy characters more easily memorable and identifiable? Sure, I'm into the heavily dramatic Machinimas, hell I make one, but all the Machinima quotes I can think of came from action, adventure, and comedy Machinima characters. In the armor that identifies them, I could barely think of any characters from dramas. Is it because drama characters are all monotoned and the world around them is always bleak and bland? Or is it because a mass majority of drama Machinimas are slower than other Machinimas? I don't think that's the reason. In movies, I prefer the ones that take their time. I actually rather dislike movies that move too fast and don't take time to establish and flesh out their characters. I could care less about the world-building aspects. Action-adventure Machinimas are more fastly paced and are more concerned about world-building, but I remember their characters instantly. Same goes for comedy. Their names, their quotes, their looks. Is it because their names are always wacky and they always have a funny voice? Or is it because Halo is cartoony to a degree, so we remember the expressions on their non-existent face? Which, in return, probably initiates a stronger memory with us. Same thing as if a character were to move around and just stand around like a drama. It could also be that most Machinimas back when in Halo 2 and Halo 3 were comedy-oriented. Most I remember came from the Halo 3 days. Is it possible that comedy strikes a heavier response because of past Machinima watching experiences? But a lot of those Machinimas at the time were about the Halo community. Look at matchmaking, look at Phil. The classics seem to be about the Halo game as their setting and their adventures along the way. Now looking at us now, we have dramatically removed ourselves from that kind of story. Most of our stuff are completely non-related to the experience of the Halo playing gamer and more to the lore of Halo itself. Or completely telling our own story. FTW Police, OnLive seem to be the only current Machinimas that tell this kind of story. But the major difference is that they didn't take place in a Halo setting, but its own established setting. That's the difference here. But there were Halo Machinimas like ours spanning back all the way to Halo 1 with My Heart is a Lonely Hunter. Well, that was a comedy, but something like Halo 2 with Sodagod's Pestilence or something like Space Dementia. Though I still keep to the opinion of our evolution, I can't help but look at the arguments against it. These are well thought out dramas with a thriller quality, a thematic one for that matter. But for all this, what am I getting at? Is there an answer to any of this? Like many stories we tell, there are multiple perspectives, and one that I've accumulated from all the speculation on this topic. I strongly believe it's because of cinematography. Can you remember any of the Phil later episodes? I can't to the clearest degree because their cinematography changed. It got professional and a lot of it's lost of the movement and the feel of the original episodes had. Sure, they aren't the prettiest thing to look at, but they captured and told a story more effectively than their later episode counterparts. You could take any Machinima that started out with a quote-unquote amateur or uncinematic cinematography style and effectively watch it become, quote, professional or cinematic, and I bet you'd be rooting for the earlier episodes by the end of it, or the ones that are amateur uncinematic. You could say it's because simply the story got more convoluted and or the original episodes will always be remembered much more than the later episodes or parts, and yes, you'd be right. But why do comedy and action adventures succeed in more memorable characters? It's the game and the cinematography. It's to thematically move the camera around in a way that we see the game, giving us that familiarity but also telling a story. And what seems to be the best way of doing that for memorable characters is to have beautifully composed wide-angle shots every chance you get, and keep the camera moving as much as you can, to give that sense of movement, not of emergency, but a movement that can reflect the emotion of a scene. Close-up shots are important. They are intimate and can highlight a character's emotions on their non-existent moving face. But to have close-up shots every single shot you take could make a very claustrophobic feel that is unwelcoming nor intimate. It only ends up hurting you in the end, so give your machinima some room to breathe, unless that's the point. And that seems to be the point for a lot of dramas, but it's the ones who make an effort to make the best out of both worlds that end up being memorable in the end, the ones that take their time to establish their environment with wide angles instead of having this close-up cinematography all the time. Looking back on it, I feel I struggled with this idea, and I think it ended up hurting episode 1 of Delinquent Pair, only later adapting all this speculation and perspective onto episode 2. So after all this, it could be a number of things, but if you want to have highly memorable characters, a blockbuster or a comedy seems to have the best chances of memorable characters. But don't let that discourage you from your drama series. You might just tip the scale in your favor.